So I already saw that in the last sessions. It's a very long and interesting day for you, so we decided to make it a little bit more interactive, not 777. We want to discuss with you guys, with the audience, and with you, Fabrice and Kurt, how we actually transform also old, traditional, but premium companies. BMW is now 100 years old. I heard from Accor Hotels you're about 50 years old. And I heard also from Fabrice that he is now Chief Digital or Data Officer. I'm Chief Digital, he's Chief Data, I don't know the difference. And actually, he has 2 years. He is 1 year ahead of me in transforming his company into the digital world. I'm just starting 1 year ago, and I want to hear a little bit about your roadblocks, your program, and how you transform your company, Fabrice. I'll go later.
Okay, thanks, Jens. Just an overview of Accor Hotel is 4,000 properties around the world. It's 95 countries. It's brands like Raffles, Fairmont, Sofitel, Pullman, Novotel, Ibis. So we began a digital transformation 2 years ago with a good budget to do it, because it was 225 million euros to transform the whole company with the digital. Into this, I'm in charge of the transformation through the data. Okay, so my mission as Chief Data Officer is to help Accor Hotels to become a data-driven company. It's a huge work, so I have to focus on priorities. We've got 3 priorities: is how to improve the hotel's top line, how to increase radically the customer lifetime value, and how to optimize the return on investments on the digital marketing. To do it so, what we have to do is to focus on the total revenue. Everything we're doing with the data is linked to the revenue. I don't try to get innovation, fair innovation, dealing with other things than revenue. Second objective is to be more predictive and how to anticipate what will happen in my market, in different hotels in the next 12 to 18 months. And the last objective is how to enlarge the data capabilities, not only by the technology, but also by the transformation of the people. So the first step to do it is that we've built up a data lake where you can find 80% of the data we use within the Accor Hotels. We've got all the data about our customers because we've got a central, unique loyalty program with in this database, we've got 50 millions of customers, 25 millions are club members, and 8 millions are active during the last 12 months. Sorry. We've got all the financial systems, so I've got all the figures about the top line of hotels and the costs. We've got a central reservation system, so I've got all the bookings, and linked to the bookings, all the channel management of these bookings. We've got all the web analytics, because we use Google Analytics on all our sites. And this is the internal data. And we've got a lot of external data. I try to develop our capabilities to capture external data. I can give you an example. We are capturing 1.5 million of events around the world each year, because I try to get correlations between events and the occupation rate of my hotels. I'm sure that in Porto, these last 3 days, the occupation rates of the hotels are slightly increased because you are here, guys. Okay, so there is a correlation between ICOM and the occupation rate. In a Mercure in the center of the city, it's full up.
Maybe one, oh, is also not on, I take this one. Fabrice, one question. It sounds very easy to establish a data lake, but I guess there were some difficulties. And the second question is, maybe also from the audience, how many data do you still have outside the data lake, maybe in different agencies, or how many of the data you have already inside the data lake?
So what we use so far is inside the data lake. Of course, we've got data outside of the data lake because we're working with the agencies, but I asked the agencies to provide me with their data, okay? We're in the digital space, we try to get our own GMP linked to our own DSP. So with this kind of data, I can segment the audience, I can target. The difficulty is how can I give my insight, my business rules to target to the external DSPs. So the models are not easy to industrialize to the outside of the company. So there is a trade-off between the make or buy, especially on the DSP side. The other stake is to give access to this data lake to different population around the group. Because, of course, my data scientist team access it very easily. We've got business analysts, but also I want to open the data to the general managers of the hotels, to the country managers, etc., etc. So it's not only the issue to get the data, to capture the data in the same technology, but it's also hence more difficult to give access to different populations. So we have to be very careful with the security, with the privacy, and we've got a lot of technology to make sure that everyone can access just to the data sets is consumed by.
In May 2018, you have to be totally transparent according to all your client data that you were acquired from the legal perspective. Will you be in time?
Yes, of course. We have no choice. It's 4% of the revenue of the total group if you're not in time. We've got a data governance board. This data governance board have two sub-commissions. One is dealing with the architecture and technology and the referentials and all the stuff to make sure that the data is reliable. The other sub-commission is about the privacy, compliance, and ethic. And this data governance board reports to the ethic committee of the group. So concerning the privacy, we're in time. We've dealt with the technology to make sure that we will be compliant. But it's not enough to be compliant. Sometimes you can be compliant, but you get too much constraints, you too much constraints that decrease your capability to make the business with. And if you want to enlarge your capabilities, you're going to the ethic problems. Like you're still compliant, but you can be not so ethic in front of your customers. So we're dealing at the superior level with the ethic committee.
Thanks a lot. So, and then for one reason you called also Kurt in from Dataiku. What was your reasoning behind it? And
the first reason, so we used Dataiku. It's just by chance we were together today, but because I wanted to have. I wanted to give access to different population very easily, and Dataiku is a very easy tool to access the data and separate data sets in front of different profiles. Dataiku is very easy to empower average users for data management and data preparations. And it gives the possibility to advanced data scientists to call for data science or libraries from Python or TensorFlow or whatever we want. So it covers the full spectrum of data management, data science, data visualization, and data security and access.
All right. Maybe we jump over to Kurt for a little bit and maybe understand your value proposition. It's the opposite, a very young company, 4 years old, Dataiku.
Yep.
Maybe you can give us a little bit of background and then going into some use cases.
Yeah, absolutely. So thank you. Yeah, indeed. So we're working with companies like Accor. What is it that we do exactly? It's a collaborative platform for data analytics, for data science in the enterprise, solving for a number of the problems that we're seeing out in the market today. And
what problems?
And so those are problems, and perhaps I don't know if Fabrice, do you mind if I jump through some over to my slides real quick? We can jump back then later. But some of the main problems, right, are keeping up with the volume of data, being able to transition these teams quickly from old ways of working. We were discussing just previously. You said something that about 7,000, nearly 8,000 sources of data, right, and looking to consolidate that perhaps in a data lake like Fabrice has already done. That presents some interesting challenges, great opportunities, but challenges as well. Because all of a sudden now we're using technologies which are not necessarily accessible to the typical user. And so what are we doing? We're looking to align organizations around their data with the use of a good combination of technologies. Because a lot of these challenges, right, that we're seeing is that data science is limited to just a few users within the organization. Even large companies like yours probably can't hire the 20 or 50 data scientists that you wish that you could. At the same time, you have these incredible resources within perhaps the analyst population. You have great financial analysts, you have great marketing analysts, you have great mechanical engineers, certainly for BMW. How do we get these populations doing more advanced work, leveraging the capabilities that are available now in the increasingly sophisticated infrastructure and capabilities which are starting to be present. So in terms of challenges, we really see it around aligning the people and the skills, aligning the data and the technology. Getting that centralized often is one of the first steps. But then, of course, with centralization comes questions of access and governance. So then, of course, that starts to raise questions about process and organization. So yes, young company, but indeed trying to address some of these issues.
Yeah. Maybe thinking about our BMW global scale, we have around 8,000 different fragmented data sources. We bring them now bit by bit together, but obviously a lot of companies are having some legacy issues because they built up for a long time. So how quickly can you, with your company, connect 8,000 fragmented databases?
Yeah, so it's an interesting challenge indeed, and we're not necessarily an ETL, right? We don't necessarily solve for having 8,000 connections. But what we do look to do, and what we do think is very important, is supporting both the legacy and the modern systems, and allowing our users to take the best out of all of those environments. And so there's some solutions that may just be purely Hadoop oriented. We know that there's importance to having the ability to connect to the legacy systems, leverage those for what they're good at. In some cases, maybe it's just reading the data from it and moving it to the data lake. But it's extremely important to be able to at least consolidate the work in a central working environment. And so that's what we see with a lot of the companies that are doing this transformation, is that indeed they're moving from that legacy to the more modern platforms, without, of course, getting rid of the legacy platforms entirely.
So your advice would be to build on top of the legacy layer an integration layer where you can then collect all the data in one lake. Is that what? Yeah,
typically that's going to be what we tend to see as a good approach. Some of the clients that we're working with, in addition to Accor, Pfizer, Unilever, they're typically taking an approach similar to this, where a lot of the work is being done in the data lake, and a lot of those capabilities are being done on top of the data lake. But you're never going to get rid of entirely the legacy system. So there needs to be strong respect for the ancestors.
And when we are looking now at these three use cases, the first thing is obviously getting the data together. Second thing is then to make actually some value out of the data. So big data, I think, is wrong. Smart data would be much more efficient. So how you do that then?
Yeah, exactly. So that's a great question because it's one thing to set up a data lake. And often what we're seeing, right, is that we're coming in perhaps 1 or 2 years after the data lake has been established, and still there's only 3 or 4 users who actually have access to it. The DBAs, the data engineers, and of course, that's not the idea, right? And so, how do you get value? Well, there's a couple of ways. One of which is going to be access. One is going to be getting the different teams to work together. One of the great advantages now of centralizing the data is that you can start bringing together different profiles, so that it's not just one team working on one part of the problem and another team working on another part of the problem, but you can have your engineers, your data scientists, your analysts working together on that same platform, using the computational and storage capabilities of that platform, but doing so in a controlled way. And so this, for us, reflects the main themes that we see in terms of what's needed for leadership, because ultimately this becomes a question for the leaders within the organization, yourselves, right? Is how are you going to bring these teams together? How are you going to educate the individuals as well? So again, in terms of getting value out, at some point, we're going to need to start bringing those analyst profiles up, start allowing them to leverage the full capability of the infrastructure. Also, education, I think, is important in the other direction, so that the data scientists and the engineers start to appreciate what is needed from the business users.
Yeah, from Accor, it's a big challenge to make sure that we're able to enlarge the capabilities and train people around the world. I've got about 1,000 revenue managers around the world, but I've got 200 business analysts also. So revenue management is in the DNA of the hospitality, so it's very easy to get them. But the business analyst is a quite new population, not very recognized by the management so far. But they're more and more useful, so we have to involve them into the community, into the trainings we've got with some tools like Dataiku, but also the knowledge of the data itself. So it's a big challenge for us.
Do we have already in the Accor hotels a kind of KPI to gather the value of data for the company? Or is it still on discussion?
Yes, the KPI is the revenue, the additional revenue. Yeah. I can get back to so it's the European way to do it. Yeah. Oh, it's animated. To leverage the data lake, we want to perform on revenue management, and we use now artificial intelligence to use the external data like events, but also social network, pricing of the competitors, etc., etc. We capture this information, and we've got machine learning algorithms to predict what will be happen in terms of demand forecasting, pricing optimization for every kind of hotel, rooms, period of the time, etc. And then the channel management means that do we have to open to Booking.com or Expedia to fill in our hotels. But this is based more on how to be secure with the forecast, and we push recommendations to the hotels to say, okay, for this period of time, this is the kind of pricing you have to do. The change management behind that is the GM is okay with the recommendation, and how to convince the GM to say, okay, the machine is better than you to recommend the pricing for those days. So this is the first issue of how to transform our whole network to 4,000 GMs. Yeah. The second way to do it is once you've got the forecast, we go back to the customer journey, and at each and every steps of the customer journey, how to have the vision of what will happen in the next 12 months, and use data enablers to optimize the revenue at each steps. So we are for the dream step, it's about how to acquire new customer, and you know exactly what I'm meaning. So what are the period of needs? What kind of campaigns I have to address to make sure that we are able to fill in the hotels during this period of needs? But it's also are we able to get sentiment analysis from our customer, from the reviews, to understand what is the satisfaction drivers of our customers, or what are the drivers which destroys the satisfaction of our customers when he arrives to a hotel for a specific purpose of stay, business or leisure, etc. So we've got a whole bunch of action from the data science team. But it's always not only to get the data, the analytics, the models, but it's also to push the models into the information system and to make sure that the buying by the business owner is on.
Yeah. Any questions to Kurt or Fabrice from the audience? No, then I have one for Fabrice. Are you not afraid to lose your customer interface to the big platforms like Booking.com or HRS or other platforms?
Well, it's the main goal of the digital plan. I mean, our business is disrupted by those guys.
Yeah.
So it's how do you say that, Michael? It's frenemy, yeah. So we need Booking and Priceline and HRS to acquire new customers because we have not the reach. Enough reach to get the whole world to propose our hotels online to our customers. So we need these guys because they invest a lot on Google. That's much more than us. But once we've got the customer into our systems, the next booking must be through our direct channels. And that's all about how to understand the satisfaction of the client, how to propose the best experience in our hotels, how to make sure that we're able to anticipate and predict the next booking. And the loyalty program is a big stake for us because once we've got the guy in the loyalty program, we know a lot about him and we are able to make sure that he will come back to our hotels without booking through Expedia or Booking.com.
Yeah. How is it with other clients from other industries, Kurt? For example, you told us about Unilever or Pfizer, because they are also, in the terms of omni-channel and e-commerce, are maybe a little bit struggling, especially CPG brands, how to actually get access to the end customer, because there's a big retailer in between or an e-commerce platform in between.
Yeah, and absolutely, there is this challenge with Pfizer. They tend to have more direct access to their end consumers, especially in the United States, where there's a lot of direct to healthcare provider marketing, which is being done. There's not a direct solution though there's no magic solution, as everyone knows, to solve that. What becomes important then is, of course, the ability to make the best of what you do have, and both in terms of the existing data and the existing people in the team, to be able to go more quickly, to be able to pursue more, perhaps some blind alleys. You don't know if this approach is going to work or not. Given the data that you have, can we make inferences about what we're able to, for example, what we can collect from social media to make inferences about buying behavior? In some cases, the answer is going to be yes. In some cases, the answer will be no. What's important is lowering the cost of doing those tests so that they can more quickly find something that does work.
Industrialize and scale.
Exactly. So industrializing both the agile fail-fast approach, and then once you do find something that does work, put that into production quickly.
Yeah. All right. Thanks a lot. I think time is up. Kurt, Fabrice, I think let's go on with the transformation. And now I think it's time for grabbing some lunches, I know.
Yes.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.